Millionaire sees his pregnant ex-wife serving coffee to his current wife at his hotel. His reaction: William Tate, at 55, was a man who seemingly had it all. He was the founder and CEO of Tate Hotels, a luxury chain with properties spanning the globe. He was a fixture on the Forbes list, a regular at charity galas, and a name whispered with respect in the highest echelons of society. His life was a whirlwind of private jets, board meetings, and lavish parties, a world of champagne wishes and caviar dreams, as the saying goes. His current residence was a sprawling penthouse overlooking Central Park in New York City, a testament to his success, a symbol of his ascent from modest beginnings in rural Ohio. The apartment was a masterpiece of modern design, filled with priceless artwork, custom-made furniture, and breathtaking views of the city skyline. But like many gilded cages, it felt more like a showpiece than a home. His marriage to Tiffany, a former model 20 years his junior, was, on the surface, another symbol of his success. Tiffany was beautiful, glamorous, and impeccably dressed. She was a fixture on the New York social scene, a woman who knew how to command attention, to turn heads, to play the role of the billionaire's wife with effortless grace. But beneath the surface, their marriage was strained. Tiffany was demanding, possessive, and insecure. She craved attention, validation, and the constant reassurance of William's wealth and status. She was more concerned with maintaining appearances than with building a genuine connection. William, while initially captivated by Tiffany's beauty and charm, had grown weary of her constant demands, her superficiality, her lack of genuine empathy. He found himself increasingly nostalgic for his earlier life, for the simplicity and authenticity of his relationship with his first wife, Anna. He often found himself staring out at the city lights, feeling a profound sense of loneliness, a nagging feeling that something was missing, that he had somehow taken a wrong turn on the road to happiness. He had achieved the American dream, but the dream had turned out to be hollow, unsatisfying, a gilded cage of his own making. He had tried to fill the void with work, with travel, with philanthropy, but nothing seemed to work. He was a man adrift, a king in his castle, but a prisoner of his own success. He was surrounded by people, but he felt profoundly alone. The penthouse, with all its luxury, felt cold and empty, a stark contrast to the warm, cozy home he had once shared with Anna, a home filled with love, laughter, and a sense of belonging that he now desperately craved. He was beginning to realize that he had traded his happiness for a life of gilded misery. William and Anna met in college at Ohio State University. He was a scrappy, ambitious business major from a working-class family. She was a kind, artistic English major with a passion for poetry and a gentle soul. They were an unlikely pair, but they were drawn to each other's differences, to the spark that ignited between them. Anna saw past William's rough exterior to the sensitive, vulnerable man beneath. She appreciated his drive, his determination, his unwavering belief in himself. She encouraged his dreams, supported his ambitions, and provided him with the emotional grounding he needed to succeed. William, in turn, was captivated by Anna's warmth, her intelligence, her genuine kindness. She was a breath of fresh air in his driven, often ruthless world. She taught him to appreciate the beauty in everyday things, to slow down, to savor the moment. She opened his eyes to a world beyond spreadsheets and profit margins. They married shortly after graduation, defying the expectations of their families and friends. William's parents, practical and down-to-earth, couldn't understand his attraction to the artsy Anna. Anna's parents, bohemian and unconventional, worried that William's ambition would consume him, would leave Anna heartbroken. But William and Anna were deeply in love, determined to prove everyone wrong. They moved to a small apartment in Columbus, Ohio, and started their life together. William worked tirelessly, starting his first business venture, a small software company, out of their spare bedroom. Anna taught English at a local community college, inspiring her students with her passion for literature. They struggled financially, but they were happy, They spent weekends exploring the city, picnicking in parks, attending free concerts and art exhibits. They dreamed of building a life together, of starting a family, of growing old together. The first cracks in their relationship began to appear after a few years. William's business was taking off, demanding more and more of his time and energy. He became increasingly focused on work, on success, on making a name for himself. Anna, while supportive of his ambitions, felt neglected, lonely, and increasingly disconnected from the man she had married. She longed for the simple days, for the intimacy they had once shared, for the time spent together, just the two of them. The issue of children also became a source of tension. They had both wanted a family, but after years of trying, they had been unable to conceive. They underwent fertility treatments, endured the emotional roller coaster of hope and disappointment, but to no avail. The official diagnosis pointed to a problem on Anna's side, a condition that made it extremely difficult, if not impossible, for her to carry a child to term. This was a devastating blow to both of them, but particularly to Anna, who had always dreamed of being a mother. The added factor of a manipulative business partner. Marco, a smooth-talking, ambitious man who had joined William's company a few years earlier, had also contributed. He was a skilled manipulator, and he was subtly driving a wedge between the couple for his personal ambition. He was slowly turning him against her, planting seeds of doubt, suggesting that Anna wasn't supportive enough, that she was holding him back, that she was more interested in her art and her poetry than in his success. He painted a picture of Anna as a dreamy, impractical woman who didn't understand the demands of the business world, a woman who was a liability rather than an asset. William, blinded by ambition and increasingly influenced by Marco's subtle manipulations, began to believe him. He started to see Anna as an obstacle to his success, a reminder of his failures, a symbol of a life he couldn't have. The final blow came during a heated argument, fueled by alcohol and years of unspoken resentment. William, in a moment of anger and frustration, accused Anna of not wanting children enough, of not trying hard enough, of deliberately sabotaging their chances of having a family. Anna, heartbroken and devastated by his cruel words, packed her bags and left. The divorce was swift and painful, a bitter end to a love story that had once seemed so promising. William, consumed by guilt and regret, offered Anna a generous settlement, but she refused, wanting nothing more than to escape the pain he had caused her. She moved back to her parents' small town, seeking solace in the familiar surroundings of her childhood, leaving William to his gilded cage, a cage that was now emptier than ever. The first love, once a beacon of hope and happiness, was lost, a victim of ambition, misunderstanding, and the insidious whispers of a manipulative third party. Anna's return to her hometown, a quiet, rural community in southern Ohio, was a retreat, a refuge from the pain and humiliation of her divorce. She moved back in her childhood bedroom, surrounded by the familiar comforts of her past, but haunted by the ghosts of her broken dreams. Her parents, while supportive, couldn't fully understand the depth of her grief, the shattering of her hopes for a future with William. They had never truly approved of him, had always seen him as too ambitious, too driven, too different from their gentle, artistic daughter. Anna found a job teaching English at the local high school, a position that offered her a sense of purpose and a connection to her community. She poured her energy into her students, inspiring them with her passion for literature, nurturing their creative talents. But the pain of her divorce lingered, a constant ache in her heart. She had loved William deeply, had believed in their future together, had sacrificed her own dreams for his. His betrayal, his cruel accusations, had left her wounded and scarred. She tried to move on, to rebuild her life, but she found it difficult to trust, to open herself up to the possibility of love again. She focused on her work, on her family, on finding some measure of peace and contentment in her solitary existence. Then, a few months after the divorce was finalized, Anna discovered she was pregnant. The shock was overwhelming. After years of trying, of enduring fertility treatments, of being told that it was virtually impossible for her to conceive. She was carrying William's child. She considered contacting him, telling him the news, but she quickly dismissed the idea. He had made his choice. He had walked out on her, had blamed her for their inability to have children. He didn't deserve to know. She decided to keep the pregnancy a secret, to raise the child on her own, to create a loving and stable home, far away from the gilded cage of William's world. Her pregnancy was difficult, both physically and emotionally. She struggled with morning sickness, fatigue, and the constant fear of losing the child she had so longed for. She also faced the financial challenges of being a single mother, the daunting prospect of raising a child on a teacher's salary. She sold the small diamond engagement ring William had given her, the only valuable possession she had kept from their marriage. The money helped, but it wasn't enough. She took on extra tutoring jobs, worked evenings and weekends, sacrificing her own needs for the sake of her unborn child. After her child was born, a beautiful, healthy baby boy, she discovered it was actually twins, two precious lives that she would fight tooth and nail to take care for. Her parents helped as much as they could, providing childcare and emotional support, but they were aging and their resources were limited. Anna was determined to make it on her own, to be independent, to provide for her children without relying on anyone else. She eventually lost her teaching position due to budget cuts at the school. She struggled to find another job, her lack of recent experience and the demands of caring for twins making it difficult to compete in the job market. She was forced to move out of her parents' house, finding a small, affordable apartment in a less desirable part of town. She took on whatever work she could find, cleaning houses, waitressing, working as a cashier. She never complained, never asked for help, never revealed the identity of her children's father. She was determined to protect them, to shield them from the pain of his abandonment, to give them a life filled with love and security, even if it meant sacrificing her own happiness and well-being. Anna's downfall had been swift and brutal, a descent from a comfortable, middle-class life to the edge of poverty. But she had faced it with courage, resilience, and an unwavering determination to provide for her children, to build a new life from the ashes of her broken dreams. Her journey was a testament to the strength of a mother's love, a story of survival and sacrifice in the face of adversity. Tiffany, William's second wife, was the antithesis of Anna. Where Anna was genuine, kind, and compassionate, Tiffany was calculating, ambitious, and self-absorbed. She had grown up in a wealthy family, accustomed to a life of privilege and luxury. She had worked as a model in her younger years, gracing the covers of fashion magazines and traveling the world. She had met William at a charity gala, a glamorous event where she had been hired to mingle with the guests and add a touch of beauty to the proceedings. William, still reeling from his divorce from Anna, had been immediately captivated by Tiffany's striking looks, her confident demeanor, and her sophisticated charm. Tiffany, in turn, had seen William as her ticket to a life of even greater wealth and status. She was tired of the modeling world, of the constant pressure to maintain her appearance, of the fleeting nature of fame. She wanted security, stability, and a life of unlimited luxury. William, with his vast fortune and his established position in society, was the perfect catch. She played her cards carefully, feigning interest in his business, flattering his ego, and presenting herself as the perfect trophy wife. William, blinded by her beauty and his own loneliness, fell for her charms. They married within a year, in a lavish ceremony that was featured in all the society magazines. Tiffany reveled in the attention, in the lavish gifts, in the access to William's unlimited resources. She redecorated the penthouse, filling it with expensive furniture, designer clothes, and glittering jewelry. She became a fixture on the New York social scene, attending charity balls, fashion shows, and exclusive parties. She cultivated a carefully crafted image of herself as a sophisticated, philanthropic woman of leisure, a woman who was devoted to her husband and her charitable causes. But beneath the surface, Tiffany was deeply insecure. She was constantly worried about losing her looks, about aging, about being replaced by a younger, more beautiful woman. She was also terrified of losing William's wealth, of being cast aside, of returning to a life of relative obscurity. She was fiercely possessive of William, controlling his schedule, monitoring his calls, and isolating him from his friends and family. She resented his lingering affection for Anna, even though she had never met her. She saw Anna as a threat, a ghost from his past that could potentially undermine her position. She had been particularly insistent that William have no contact with Anna after the divorce. She had made it clear that she wouldn't tolerate any lingering attachments, any sentimental gestures, any hint of regret. Tiffany's reign was one of gilded opulence and emotional emptiness. She had achieved everything she had ever wanted, but she was profoundly unhappy. She had traded genuine connection for material possessions, love for status, and happiness for a life of gilded misery. She was a prisoner of her own ambition, a victim of her own insecurities, a queen in her castle, but utterly alone. The hotel encounter, the sudden appearance of William's ex-wife, was about to shatter her carefully constructed world, exposing the fragility of her reign and the hollowness of her triumphs. The annual Tate Hotel's board meeting was being held at the flagship property in downtown Chicago, a gleaming skyscraper that dominated the city skyline. William, despite his personal turmoil, was determined to maintain a professional demeanor, to project an image of strength and control. Tiffany, as always, was at his side, dressed in a designer suit that cost more than most people's monthly rent. She clung to his arm, smiling for the cameras, playing the role of the supportive, devoted wife. They were in the hotel's grand ballroom, attending a luncheon for the board members and their spouses. The room was filled with the clinking of silverware, the murmur of conversation, and the scent of expensive perfume. William was engaged in a conversation with a group of investors, discussing the company's latest expansion plans, when he saw her. Across the room, pushing a cart laden with coffee pots and pastries, was Anna. His breath caught in his throat. He felt a jolt of recognition, a surge of emotions that he had tried so hard to suppress. Anna looked different, older, wearier, but still possessed that same quiet beauty, that same gentle grace that had captivated him all those years ago. But it wasn't just Anna that stunned him. It was the unmistakable swell of her belly, the clear indication that she was pregnant. And then he saw it. She turned a little more to the side, and he can see the profile of her face, and it is no longer the youthful face of his youth. It is the mature, strong face that he would recognize anywhere. His mind raced. He had no idea that Anna was pregnant. He had no idea that she was working as a waitress. He had no idea that she was struggling. Tiffany, following William's gaze, saw Anna as well. Her face hardened with a mixture of annoyance and disdain. "Who is that woman?" she asked, her voice dripping with condescension. "And why is she staring at you?" Before William could answer, Anna reached their table. She began to pour coffee for Tiffany, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes fixed on the task at hand, avoiding William's gaze. "Good afternoon, madam," Anna said, her voice soft and polite, but with an undercurrent of tension. "Would you care for some coffee?" Tiffany, oblivious to the unfolding drama, waved her hand dismissively. "No, thank you," she said, her voice cold and imperious. "But you can clear these plates. They're cluttering the table." William, unable to contain himself any longer, stood up abruptly, knocking over his chair in the process. The sudden movement silenced the surrounding conversations, drawing the attention of everyone in the room. "Anna," he said, his voice hoarse with emotion, his eyes fixed on his ex-wife's face. Anna looked up, her eyes meeting his for the first time. Her expression was a mixture of shock, confusion, and a flicker of something he couldn't quite decipher. Perhaps anger, perhaps pain, perhaps a flicker of the old love they had once shared. William, ignoring the stares of the assembled guests, ignoring Tiffany's furious whispers, walked around the table and knelt down in front of Anna. his hand reaching out to gently touch her swollen belly. The room was silent, everyone watching in stunned disbelief. This was a scene straight out of soap opera, a public display of emotion that was completely out of character for the usually reserved and controlled William Tate. "Anna," he said again, his voice choked with emotion. I didn't know. I'm so sorry. For everything." Tears welled up in Anna's eyes, but she blinked them back, her pride and her anger warring with the sudden surge of vulnerability she felt. "Please, William," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "Don't do this. Not here. Not now." But William was beyond caring about propriety, about social norms, about the expectations of his peers. He had been living a lie for far too long, and the sight of Anna, pregnant and working as a waitress, had shattered the facade, had awakened him to the reality of his mistakes, to the depth of his regret. "I have to," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I have to tell you how sorry I am. For leaving you, for blaming you, for everything. I was a fool, Anna. A blind, arrogant fool." He looked up at her, his eyes pleading for forgiveness, for understanding. "Please, let me help you. Let me take care of you and the baby. Let me make things right." Tiffany, furious and humiliated, stood up, her face contorted with rage. "William, have you lost your mind?" she hissed. "Get up from there. You're embarrassing yourself and me." But William ignored her. He remained kneeling before Anna, his hand still resting gently on her belly, his eyes locked on hers. "I know I don't deserve it," he said, his voice raw with emotion. "But please, Anna, give me another chance. Let me be a part of your life, of our child's life." The hotel encounter had become a public spectacle, a dramatic confrontation that had exposed the hidden truths, the buried regrets, and the enduring power of love and forgiveness. The gilded cage had been shattered, the carefully constructed facade had crumbled, and William Tate, the billionaire hotel magnate, was kneeling before his pregnant ex-wife, begging for a second chance, his future hanging in the balance. Dependent on the decision of the woman he had once so cruelly abandoned. The reaction from everyone was stunned silence, broken only by Tiffany's furious gasps and the faint sound of Anna's trembling breath. The days following the dramatic scene at the hotel were a period of intense introspection and soul-searching for William. He had retreated to his penthouse, leaving Tiffany to deal with the fallout of his public display of remorse and contrition. He ignored her calls, her texts, her furious demands for an explanation. He spent hours staring out at the city skyline, replaying the events of his life, examining his choices, confronting his mistakes. He realized that he had been living a life of quiet desperation, chasing after material success and social status, while neglecting the things that truly mattered: love, family, and genuine human connection. He thought about Anna, about the pain he had caused her, about the life he had denied her. He thought about their unborn child, a child he had never known existed, a child he now desperately wanted to be a part of. He realized that he had been blinded by ambition, by pride, by the insidious whispers of Marco, his former business partner. He had allowed himself to be manipulated, to be led astray, to betray the woman he had once loved with all his heart. He felt a profound sense of guilt, of shame, of regret. He had made a terrible mistake, and he had to find a way to make amends, to atone for his sins. He knew it wouldn't be easy. He knew that Anna might never forgive him. He knew that Tiffany would likely never understand. But he had to try. He started by severing all ties with Marco, firing him from the company, and initiating a legal investigation into his business dealings. He suspected that Marco had been involved in more than just manipulating his personal life, that he had been engaging in unethical, perhaps even illegal, activities within the company. He then contacted his lawyer, instructing him to prepare a generous financial settlement for Anna and the child, ensuring their security and well-being, regardless of whether she accepted his apology or allowed him to be a part of their lives. It was a small gesture, a token of his remorse, but it was all he could do at that moment. He also started attending therapy, seeking professional help to deal with his emotional turmoil, to understand his past mistakes, and to learn how to build healthier relationships in the future. He realized that he had a lot of work to do on himself, on his values, on his priorities. He knew that he couldn't simply expect Anna to forgive him, to welcome him back into her life with open arms. He had to earn her trust, to prove to her that he had changed, that he was genuinely sorry for the pain he had caused her. He was prepared to do whatever it took, to spend the rest of his life making amends, to be the man she had once believed him to be, the man he should have been all along. William's awakening was a painful but necessary process, a stripping away of the illusions he had created, a confrontation with the truth of his own failings. It was a journey of self-discovery, a quest for redemption, a desperate attempt to reclaim the love and the family he had so carelessly thrown away. The road ahead would be long and difficult, but he was determined to walk it, to face the consequences of his actions, and to, hopefully, find some measure of peace and forgiveness. Anna, after the initial shock of William's public display of remorse, had retreated into a state of angry disbelief. She had spent years building a wall around her heart, protecting herself and her child from the pain of his abandonment. Now, he was back, disrupting her carefully constructed world, demanding a second chance that she wasn't sure she was willing to give. She had returned to her small apartment, the twins, Samuel and Benjamin, sensing her distress, clinging to her, their innocent eyes filled with concern. She had explained the situation to them as best she could, telling them that the man they had seen at the hotel was their father, a man who had made mistakes, a man who was now trying to make amends. The twins, wise beyond their years, had reacted with a mixture of curiosity and caution. They had grown up without a father, had learned to rely on their mother, on each other, on their small circle of friends and family. They were wary of this stranger, this man who had appeared out of nowhere, claiming to be their father. Anna had spent the next few days wrestling with her emotions. She was angry at William for his past actions, for his betrayal, for his cruelty. She was resentful of his wealth, his privilege, his ability to swoop back into her life and disrupt everything. She was also afraid of being hurt again, afraid of trusting him, afraid of exposing her children to further pain and disappointment. She had built a good life for them, a stable life, a life filled with love and security. She didn't want to risk losing that, not for anything. But beneath the anger and the fear, there was a flicker of something else. A flicker of hope, a flicker of longing, a flicker of the love she had once felt for William. She had never stopped loving him completely, even after all the pain he had caused her. She had simply buried her feelings deep down, buried them under layers of resentment and self-preservation. When William's lawyer contacted her, offering a generous financial settlement, she was initially insulted. She didn't want his money. She didn't want his pity. She wanted him to understand the pain he had caused her, to acknowledge the damage he had done. She refused to meet with William, refused to take his calls, refused to acknowledge his attempts to communicate with her. She was determined to protect herself, to protect her children, to maintain the wall she had so carefully constructed around her heart. But William was persistent. He sent her letters, expressing his remorse, his regret, his desire to make amends. He sent her flowers, gifts for the twins, small tokens of his affection. He didn't push, he didn't demand. He simply persisted, patiently waiting for her to be ready to talk, to listen, to consider the possibility of forgiveness. Anna's resistance was born out of pain, out of fear, out of a deep-seated need to protect herself and her children. She had been hurt too many times, had learned to rely on her own strength, her own resilience. She wasn't sure if she could trust William again, if she could ever truly forgive him for the past. But she also knew that she couldn't ignore him forever, that she owed it to herself and to her children to at least hear him out, to consider the possibility of a different future, a future where their father was a part of their lives, a future where forgiveness might finally be possible. The wall she had built was strong, but it was beginning to crack, revealing the vulnerability and the longing that lay beneath. The path towards reconciliation or at least a peaceful resolution, was slow, arduous, and fraught with challenges. Anna, after much internal debate and with the encouragement of her parents, finally agreed to meet with William, but on her terms, in a neutral location with a mediator present. The meeting was tense, awkward, and emotionally charged. Anna, her face etched with years of pain and resentment, laid out her grievances, her anger, her hurt. She accused William of abandoning her, of betraying her, of destroying her dreams. William listened patiently, absorbing her anger, acknowledging his mistakes, expressing his deep remorse. He didn't try to excuse his actions. He didn't try to minimize her pain. He simply apologized again and again for the hurt he had caused her. The mediator, a skilled therapist specializing in family reconciliation, facilitated the conversation, guiding them toward a more productive dialogue, helping them to express their feelings, their needs, their expectations. The twins were not present at the initial meeting, but they were informed of the discussions, their feelings and opinions carefully considered. They were curious about their father, but also wary, hesitant to trust a man they had never known. Over several weeks, William and Anna met regularly, sometimes with the mediator, sometimes alone. They slowly began to rebuild a fragile connection, a tentative understanding. They talked about their past, about their mistakes, about their hopes for the future. Anna gradually began to see the genuine remorse in William's eyes, the sincerity in his voice. She began to believe that he had changed, that he was truly sorry for his actions, that he was committed to making amends. Tiffany, predictably, did not react well to William's attempts at reconciliation. She filed for divorce, demanding a substantial settlement, accusing him of infidelity and emotional cruelty. She was furious, humiliated, and determined to make him pay for his betrayal. William, while saddened by the end of his second marriage, did not fight Tiffany's demands. He had accepted that his relationship with her was beyond repair, that it had been a mistake from the beginning. He was focused on rebuilding his relationship with Anna and his children, on creating a new future, a future based on love, forgiveness, and genuine connection. The legal battles with Tiffany were messy and protracted, but William eventually reached a settlement, giving her a significant portion of his wealth, but retaining enough to provide for Anna and the twins. The question of custody and visitation rights for the twins was more complex. Anna was understandably protective of her children, hesitant to allow William unfettered access. They eventually agreed on a gradual, phased approach, starting with supervised visits, then progressing to overnight stays, and eventually to a shared custody arrangement. The ending was not a fairy tale, a perfect reunion. William and Anna did not remarry, did not rekindle their romantic relationship. They remained friends, co-parents, bound together by their shared love for their children. The twins, initially hesitant and confused, gradually warmed to William, accepting him as their father, forging a bond that had been denied to them for so long. They learned about his life, his work, his past. They also learned about their mother's strength, her resilience, her unwavering love for them. William, while still involved in his business interests, significantly reduced his workload, prioritizing his family over his career. He spent his time attending the twins' school events, helping them with their homework, taking them on outings, simply being present in their lives. He also continued to support Anna, both financially and emotionally, helping her to pursue her own dreams, to find fulfillment and happiness beyond her role as a mother. He had learned, the hard way, that true wealth was not measured in dollars and cents, but in the love of family, the bonds of friendship, and the enduring power of forgiveness. The long road to redemption had been challenging, but it had also been rewarding. William had found a measure of peace, a sense of purpose, a renewed appreciation for the simple joys of life. He had learned from his mistakes, had grown as a person, and had, in his own way, created a new, more meaningful definition of the American dream. It was a bittersweet resolution, a testament to the complexities of human relationships, the enduring power of love, and the possibility of finding forgiveness and healing, even in the face of profound loss and betrayal. The final scene shows them all having dinner, not as a perfect family, and not even as a whole family. It is William, Anna, Sam, Ben, and Anna's parents. They are civil, and there are sparks of happiness. It is not perfect, but it is real,